Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today's Thursday, September the 2nd, and here we are ready for another lecture. Yes, it is Thursday. We are only a few days away from submission, which means some of you are starting to freak out. That is expected, and I hope that maybe we can put some of those concerns, we can put them to bed. We can just, address them and make this a peaceful transition between now and the delivery. I don't know how that sounded, but I don't know. Maybe it was just a lot better in my head. Anyways, let's go. We're always going to start with the VMs. Here we have the website, which you guys have seen before. This website, I have it something called demo. I am running a different version than the one that you guys have. That's why I can see this icon. You guys don't have that. So please stay in your own page. So if you're in the CTS 4348, stay there. And obviously, if you are on the COP, also stay there as well. Just because it makes it a lot easier for me to make changes, I will preview them. And then as things move forward, I will start rolling those edits to your corresponding classes. So let's start with that. A few things have changed. So I don't know if you've noticed, but the UI now has a checkbox for any VM that has been submitted. We still have the information about the VM, and this little icon is now enabled. If you don't see the little submit icon enabled, it's not green. I don't know what happened. I guess at some point, maybe some sort of CSS overrode the color, but it is at least enabled and you can click on it. It doesn't tell you do not click on it. You can click. And if you don't see it, then just do a quick force reload on the website just to make sure that this is actually working. Currently, I should be working in Scientific Linux 7, so I can bring that up onto the screen so I can show you. And there it is. As you see, not much is happening here. I'm just kind of, setting it up. And the reason why I'm doing this is just so I can show you what happens between having an IP and not having an IP on the network. So if we were to submit something like this and we don't know if the VM is on the network or not, properly configured, I can just hit the submit button. We will be prompted for a confirmation, which is always very important. Make sure that you know what you're doing. I'm going to let you just go ahead and say, yes, I would like to submit. The answer is okay. And then after that, it does take a little bit. So you notice the little notifications are showing up on the top now. And it says you cannot ping the VM, therefore no submission is recorded. So very straightforward to the point. I just letting you know the submission goes away after like 5 seconds. So don't worry too much about it. For the demo that I'm going to run, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to configure the IP here. So I'm going to check that box and I'm going to give myself a name. So let's just give myself the name. I'm going to turn on the interface and I'm going to give myself the IP. So manual. And obviously this will be a really bad demo because although I can ping the server, that doesn't necessarily mean that I can do anything else on the machine. So here we go, 10.128.2.101. And then the net mask will be /24 or 255.255.255.0, which you guys already know about that one. And the gateway is 254. Here we go. We have our DNS with all the 8s that we need. We're going to press save. Our interface is now being saved. I'm going to go ahead and just say, turn that on. And the difference here is that imagine that you have gone through the whole installation, and we can actually do that. Imagine that you've gone through the whole installation. You don't say general purpose. We can say minimal installed, or you can leave that there. It doesn't really matter. For the purpose of this demo, we'll install that. Everything should be fine. Click continue. Give this guy a password. So I'm going to give it my actual Panther ID. And there it is. We're going to hit done. And it will just install, get everything ready, and move on. Because we are ready to move on, obviously, if you submit, the IPs on the network and the submission will go through. So we'll put that we'll put that on hold for a minute. And I'm going to put that on hold just so I can tell you basically what's going to happen moving forward. Moving forward, we are not going to do any of this, ladies and gentlemen. We are not doing any of this manual configuration of virtual machines. What's going to happen is the following. I wish I could show you. I don't have the user interface. I ran out of time, but I'm going to show you something here. If you make websites or you know how websites operate, websites can run a background web request, and that's basically what's going to happen when I hit send to S8. When I hit send to S8, I'm going to click that, and it's going to create what's called an HTTP request, XML HTTP request. We're going to hit that. Boom. Oh, session has ended. Okay, that's great. Look, even better. That way the website breaks in the middle of something. Now we know all of these little UI components that I've never polished on my previous lecture is something that I've been working on because I want to make sure that you get the best experience. So if you click something and it's currently not available because you're logged out, then by all means, let's get you back wherever you are. So like I said, in your session, you don't see the new component, but I'm going to go to demo so I can show you guys here what's going to happen. Like I said, there will be an XML HTTP request. We're going to go ahead and click that on the new VMs, and eventually when the VM finishes loading, which you see here, the progress bar, when it finishes, I will let you know. We will update the machine and we say, hey, let's guess what? This is your machine. It completed the task, right? So this actually tells me, hey, completed the setup, and this is the new information on how you're going to connect. Pay close attention. We're not going to connect using VNC because that's mostly for setup. Moving forward, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we use SSH. That is going to be very, 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 very important. We're going to be using SSH because that's how we're going to connect from our computer to Ocelot and from Ocelot onto our VMs. Here we go. Behind the scenes, and what populates this table, what populates this little form is a table. In this table, I already know that the VM that I want to show you has this particular IP. Therefore, I'm going to move that away. I'm going to open up a new terminal and now show you. Moving forward, this is how we're going to do things. You're going to connect to Ocelot. Once you're there, you're going to connect. You're going to connect to the IP listed in here, which I will randomly generate. These IPs will be random, and you will connect as root. The thing is that when you connect as root, you are going to be prompted for the password. So let me go ahead and just simulate that back with my computer. Because I connected these machines, I have the ability to log in without a password, which is exactly what we're going to learn in public key cryptography. All right, well, how do we get there? Mind you, we're supposed to have a quiz every week, and we will have a quiz this week. And the material for that quiz is actually coming mostly out of this video. There will be another video tomorrow, but I'm almost sure that most of the questions will come out of here. Maybe 4 out of the 5 questions will be coming out of this video. So pay close attention. Here's what's going to happen. Moving forward, you're going to have the IP of the server issued to you. The IP will always change, or it can be the same one if you are lucky and the dice roll and give you the same number. That's a possibility. When you connect, you're going to be prompted for a password. Only in this section, we're going to enter your Panther ID. So I'm going to enter my Panther ID, and now you're connected. Notice the VM nomenclature goes up by 1. So this will be technically your next VM. If we do the next one, it will be 15, 16, 17, and so forth. And now we have a VM that we can work with. This VM has already been updated. So we know that DNF history, right? So DNF history will tell us that the machine has been updated. It tells us when the machine was installed and when the machine was updated. The machine may contain some extra configuration settings depending on the assignment, but usually you will get a machine that you can connect. Moving forward, we will all connect with SSL, with this cryptography method. Why? Because I want to avoid the use of passwords. That is correct. So the professor is throwing all these big words at us, but we haven't even learned any of this material. This is the point where now really we go into lecture mode. Are you guys ready? I hope so. Let's go ahead and dive into the lectures. Here, while this is happening in the background, believe it or not, the installation is actually creating a bunch of accounts. It's creating mostly important the root account, which is how we connect. Additionally, during installation, you can create a secondary user. Always very important to have another user that can connect. So we're going to start talking about account management. Important. Accounts. How do we connect? How do we create them? Where are they? And how do they operate? Let's go. First and foremost, since we have a working VM, let's go ahead and clear the screen. That way it's easy. Clear works perfectly on a terminal. And we can still scroll up and down on the terminal. In VNC, obviously, we cannot copy paste. So that's the beautiful thing about staying here on this terminal. So what are we going to do here when it comes down to account management? I know, I have the book. I could show you the book, but I think it'll be a little bit more fun if we just go to Google, right? And we put here account management Unix, right? So totally spell that. And we can start to see some of the basic things of what it does, right? So there's accounts, there's system accounts, there's user accounts. We have groups, we have to manage them, and there's a lot of information. So what kind of information is available? Most of the websites will always talk about the same topic. So even if you don't have the book handy, it is important to realize that you can always find this information on the internet, and be careful because some of the information may actually be a bit misleading. So you always have to keep an eye out for it. So let's go ahead and test a few of the things that we find online. One of the files that is very important, and it's actually on my slides, there's actually a deco slide, is the etc passwd. In this file, you can read what it says here, but we're going to go and just go on an adventure. We're going to learn by doing. We're going to learn by exploration. This file contains the usernames for all the accounts currently in the system. And we can see that this file is delimited by columns, right? So there's columns in between the fields, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 columns. Eventually, they will actually tell you what these columns are. In this example, this website, not the best example, doesn't seem to really go too deep into what this file is. So obviously, if we're more interested into what this file contains, let's do that. Let's go into Google and let's just say more about that file. I just type the word more and about simply because if I just put a slash, it might try to open something on my computer, and that's not necessarily what I want. Understanding this file, what does it contain? It contains 7 different fields, and notice they're all listed here. One of them, obviously, the password, placeholders, user ID, group ID. We have here a comment. So that's number 5 is a comment. The next one will be where the account resides or its home folder. And then last but not least, it will be its shell. Wow, that seemed like there was a lot of information coming at you at once. Yes, that is true. Each and every single one of your VMs, so we actually take a minute and we step back and we look at all the VMs that we installed. Each and every single one of these VMs has a different etc passwd. This is to compare and contrast the different versions, right? Because let's see, personally, I like chocolate ice cream. I'm a chocolate person. I'm not a vanilla person. I like chocolate. And hey, guess what? Chocolate ice cream is very different from like the Rocky Road and the brownie ones and all of those that just have something else. Clearly, they have other components, but they still keep that chocolate foundation. Let's just think of all these Unix machines as that chocolate one, right? That's the base, and then obviously you can have it as pure as possible, and then you can add a few sprinkles here and there. Oh, look at that. Scientific Linux is ready for us. So like I said, not all the files, the file is the same, but not the content might be different. The numbers of the users might be different. Maybe the FTP account in CentOS happens to be user ID 14, group 50, but maybe in Scientific Linux 7, it might be a different number. We don't know. We can actually find out right now. Let's go ahead and let's see. Let's compare and contrast the Etsy PassWD. Ah, cool. So where is FTP? FTP is 14 and 50, and in here, oh, it's actually the same. Not bad, not bad. But here we have Cronny at 998, and I saw somebody else with 998. So we start to see a couple of similarities and a couple of differences, which doesn't hurt, but it's good to know that they are not the same. You always have to double check which version of Unix are you actually using so that you can get the right information. You can criticize me all you want, but hey, that is what going to Google really helps, especially if you can navigate through these websites fairly quick. There's a lot of material. You can't really rely on the book so much. It's great for theory though, but if you're trying to find these smaller nuances, you have to be quick on your feet and go search stuff online. Whew, that was fun, right? Obviously, we can prove one thing. We can say, what about the other file? What about this one? So we looked at password, and now I can open up the shadow file. And obviously, I wish I could paste. I don't know if you can hear me hitting that key. You can't paste on VNC, and that's why we don't use that, right? We're just going to kind of put that on the side. We're just going to minimize it and then say bye-bye. We'll talk to you in a little bit. So the shadow file, what does the shadow file contain? The shadow file contains an exact copy of the number of users from PassWD. Hold on, Professor. What did you just say? Let's go down slowly. Did you just say that it contains the exact number of users? That's right. Okay, let's prove that. Let's prove that. Obviously, I can read all the users in here. You can retain them in your head, and we can see them on the other file, or we can use a little bit of Unix. Let's do some Unix file manipulation. Ooh, big words in here. How are we going to do this? Step one, notice the first thing that we've done is we actually gone back to foundations. We're using commands to tell the operating system what we want. The first command, without you even noticing too much, is cat. Means we want to open up a file, and here's the absolute file path representation of PassWD. It exists on the operating system inside the Etsy folder, and this is the file. This is how we open up that document. In contrast, this will be shadow. It's a completely different address, right? That's cool, not impressive, but let's combine that with what's called a pipe. We're going to move data from one command over to another command. Wow, this is getting complicated very quickly. Hope you're taking notes. Hope we are ready for what's next. We're going to be doing some really interesting stuff here. We're going to open up the file, and so this is the original file. And what we're going to do is we're going to invert the file. So cat means open the document from the top down. So root is on the beginning and SSHD is on the top. But if you invert the word cat and we call it tac, we can actually get the reverse version of the file. Interesting, very interesting stuff. So you're telling me that I can grab the output of the left, pipe it in, and then send it to another command on the right-hand side. The answer is yes. You could also just open the file with tac, which means you're automatically inverting the file from the beginning. But this is just a sample, very, very subtle example to show you the following. We can open up the file, and then we can send it to another command called word count. That's what the WC stands for, word count. And we're going to count the number of lines. The number of lines is basically defined by a flag, command option argument. This is the option. Call them a flag. It's also known as an option, interchangeable words, but it's command option argument. That is the key to everything in Unix. You have a command. You may have a couple of options. There's two types of options. Sometimes we have short options, which means they're only one letter. Sometimes you have longer options, which they're actually spelled like a word, and you can do like dash dash all dash dash, I don't know, list. And you have the actual argument, right? Like, what are you going to pass? It can be one argument, it can be many arguments. You have the arguments right there. So in this case, we're going to pass the left-hand side value data, and we're going to count it. At this point, because I'm lazy and I don't want to count these things, I can tell you that there are 22 lines in that file. Subsequently, if that was pass WD, that means that shadow should also contain 22 lines, because one thing I said earlier means that both files are exactly the same. They both contain the same number of users. That is correct. Why do they contain the same number of users? Because at some point in the shadow file, now we have here the encrypted password. That's what's stored. And there's also a few other things like expirations and a bunch of smaller details, which if you want a more detailed explanation, we can always just go find on the internet and then say, hey, what about this file? What is contained inside of this shadow file? Same website, CyberCity, and then here we go, and it tells us, hey, there's same 6 fields where we have the username, the password, the last time the password were changed, the minimum and maximum number of days, which usually they're just kind of perpetual because we don't have any password policy, and basically just keeps on going. So this is basically how the identity of the user starts to form. But that's not it. There's also another file called the etc group. And this file does not necessarily match the number of users. So we can say that there are 40 groups, because a user might be a member of more than one group. Imagine at FIU, you are a student, and every class that you take is a group. So therefore, there's less students than there are groups, or there are less classes than there are students, but at the same time, a student can be a member of many groups, and a group can have a lot of students. So it's kind of a many-to-many relationship, something denoted in databases. At this point, we have a couple of components, right? We've seen what it is to do administration. So we have here the passwd, we have the shadow file, we've seen the group file, and last but not least, let's talk about the gshadow, which is something that has to do with groups. Here we go. We see the gshadow, not too exciting. It's just another file with all the groups listed here as well. And if we do this correctly, we should see that this one also contains 40 users. So in a way, you can think that passwd and shadow file both together should give you the identity of a user, and then this one's will give you the identity of a group. Technically, they're one-to-one, meaning that for every account in one file, there should be its counterpart on the other file. So that is basically what we have. And now, with that little bit of an understanding and a demo, which never hurts, we're about to create our first couple of accounts. Let's go. User add, that is the command. Yes, that is the command. We can actually check that command by opening up the manual of user add. It tells us this is the way to create a new user, update, and there's some options as well here. We can see them. We can read about each and every single one of them. Mind you, this is the best way to learn about that command. The reason being is you don't want to go on the internet. So please, now I kind of bite my tongue and tell you to do the opposite of what I just did. Don't go around and then say user add Unix. The reason why I say don't do this is because when they show you some examples, they might be referencing either A, an older version of Linux, B, a version of Linux that contains extra options that not necessarily apply to you, and it can just get a little bit confusing. So first and foremost, always check your manual, see what you want to do here. You can say, oh, you know what? I'm interested in how do I add a comment. Let's go back to this video. And remember, there's two things that I said. One, you can add options that are short options or long options. So here is the shorter version of that, and this is the longer version of that as well. These option accepts an argument. So now we're going to have a user with more than one single argument. So let's go ahead and dive into this. Let's see what this actually means for us. Looking at our users from first, we have 22. I believe that was the magical number. Now let's add our first account. User add test1. That's it, test1. I'm just going to keep it short so we can do some math. Here we go. Then we go back to password. We see 23 accounts. We can confirm that visually. We can open up the file. We see that there is an account called T1, and its user ID and group ID are actually on the 1000 level. Accounts with user IDs less than 1000 are usually reserved for system accounts. So the system already understands that when he creates an account, it's going to be a user account, and that's always going to be above 1000. That's nice. That's very cool. We can also check the shadow file. And when we check the shadow file, we see that the T1 account is also there, but it lacks this very, very long string. That string is nothing more than the password. It's the encrypted version of my Panther ID. So if my Panther ID was 1234567, then that will be the equivalent of that password. So this account at the moment has no password. Let's go back to passwd. We see the account, and we see obviously that in this field, which I should have left handy, shadow passwd, in this field, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth column, it's reserved for, and it says explicitly here, it explained for the geckos. Basically a place for comments. It's a place that you can fill up with information like the full name, phone number, address. I mean, whatever you want to add in here, you can definitely drop. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a second user. So let's go ahead and type in user add T2. And I will put in -C, and I will add a comment, and I'll say, I am a comment, right? So just like that, I will not avoid any sort of special characters. Like I will try not to put the apostrophes. I will try not to put anything else. Just keep it simple. And we press enter. We will then go back to passwd. Now we should have 24 users, which it's confirmed. In addition to that, we should also have 24 in shadow. And every time we add a user, believe it or not, every time we add a user, it creates a group. So the group file has also been going up by 1. And that is because group 1000 did not used to exist, and 1001 also was unavailable prior to this account. At this point, we have T1 and T2 in the system, and one of them has the comments / the geckos information. So very important stuff. You can add very detailed stuff in here for you, for your own records, right? That's basically for us. Well, that's fun. We've created some accounts, and that works perfect. What else can we do? Let's try something different. So I believe I tried to do this in one of the other videos. It didn't work as I expected. I don't know why the loop didn't go, but we could potentially create many accounts by doing loops. And the Unix class, the Unix administration will eventually be forced to write the scripts and kind of put these things together where they need to start automating and thinking out of the box on how to do a lot of work with very little effort. And for the advanced Unix programming, well, we're going to hit the ground running because we are going to start working on scripts from the second assignment. So let's try to give both classes a little bit of a nudge. Eventually, I think that after I get this page up and running with the next video, with the next section, I'll be able to just break the videos apart. So apologies, but once we get the SSH cryptography for both of you, we will break you guys apart. So here we go. We can create a for loop. So for I being the variable in curly braces, I can say for 1, let's start with account number 3 to account 1000, just separated by dots. That will help me do the break. I can print out, let's see here, I can print to the screen $, which is the reference to the variable. press enter and then done. And now we see that we printed all 98 accounts, text, but we don't only want to print the text, but we will also want to do user add $. I. We want to add all these users dynamically. And if I press it, it's actually going to go a little bit slower. Clearly, we can tell that it's going slow because if you rewind the video, the other one was blazing fast, but now the system has to take a second, understand the command, think about it, say, well, the user wants me to add an account, which means I need to modify a certain number of files, which we've been discussing this entire time. I have to modify the passwd, I have to modify the shadow, I have to create a home folder for that account. I probably have to log an event in the system that tells the system, hey, we just added an account, and all of this information is happening from that single command. Yep, that's very powerful stuff. Moving forward, the next assignment, we're going to do SSH keys, which is the first piece, but after that, we're going to do account management. We're going to learn how to add accounts, we're going to learn how to delete accounts, we're going to learn how to modify them and work with groups. We're going to work with groups. Obviously, for the Unix administration, you guys are going to leverage the built-in tools like user add. For the advanced programming, we're going to start by building our own script. So we're not going to touch the default user add. We're going to start building our own scripts that replicate, or we can just call it reverse engineer these commands so that we can understand them better. And there's no better way to start programming than to replicate somebody else's work or something that we know works well. This happens in a lot of, this happens in a lot of sciences, right? Or I don't know, I want to call them sciences, but in all disciplines, there you go. That's the word I was looking for. This happens in a lot of disciplines. If you took photography, they always say, go out to the streets and take some pictures of houses and parks and people. If you're an artist and you're doing some paintings, they always tell you to paint an apple and a hand and some naked model that shows up in class. I don't know, never understood that in movies, but I guess it does happen at some point. What else? Maybe if you're in film, they ask you to do a short monologue or a short video. It doesn't matter. You always kind of follow some sort of format that everybody has done, kind of a rite of passage. And it helps. It really helps to really just work on this, jump on this thing that is commonly known and get it out of the way, right? So in this case, we're going to replicate our user add commands and a few other things. So that's basically what we're getting at. And all I'm doing right now is I'm just letting time go by because, hey, 1,000 accounts it's a long time. So we didn't get to all the 1,000 accounts, but we got to 640, and that's, in my book, that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and open up the file, see all 640 accounts have been listed. We can scroll all the way up, and all the accounts are there. I did mention that every time the account gets added, yes, it modifies this file. Yes, it modifies the shadow file, so we can go back to shadow. And last but not least, when you go to the home folder, so in your operating system classes, maybe website construction or anything that has to do with Unix, if you've seen the Unix file structure, you know that there's the root, there's etc file, var, a couple places, but home is usually where all the accounts exist. I should have shown you the home folder before we created these accounts, but conveniently enough, we have a VM that doesn't have any home folders. Basically, no accounts have been added here. So I can say user add T1, and now in the home folder, there is a folder called T1. That's for that particular account, which tends to work great. Up to this point, we have the folders, we have added some accounts. So what else can we do about it? Well, the next thing that we can do about it is we can issue each and every single one of these accounts a password. That's important because if I log out I cannot just log in as T1 because I don't know its password. And that is true. And one way to confirm this is by going to the Etsy shadow document. Again, all of these accounts, you see the double exclamation, it means they don't have a password set up on them. The only one that has a password at the current moment happens to be root, which is the account that we logged in with. So if I get out, I come in back as root, I will be able to log in with my Panther ID. Our job is to actually change the password for one of those accounts. We're going to do a little bit of that password management right now. We want to make sure that we are working correctly. I just want to double check one thing. I want to make sure that the YouTube video is still running. Yep, it's still there. I heard myself. Because when the worst thing that can happen is you do all of this work, record the video, everything seems to be working fine, and then two things can happen. YouTube fail the stream, or you then realize that there was no audio, and then you just scramble. Great, but everything is working. YouTube's working, audio is working, so let's go. What we're going to do is we're going to learn about another command, passwd. This command is a password utility, and we can read more about it on the manual passwd. It says update users authentication tokens. Yep, that's what it is. It works with a bunch of other plugins and a bunch of other things that are very, very powerful within Unix. But to keep it simple, all we want to do is just want to make sure that we change someone's account. In here, we have the ability to, what do you call it? We have the ability to do things programmatically. So we can say, you know what, I would like to make a script that changes the password for 1,000 accounts, and that's fine. We can also work with some of the policy requirements, like, hey, I want this account to have a password for X number of days with a maximum of X number of days, and you might want to have a warning every so often. Maybe you don't want to delete the account, you just want to make it inactive. That's available. And there's a lot of little things here that we can apply. At the moment, what interests me is, let's just say passwd. Entering passwd by itself changes the password of root. And actually, how do we know that? Because it's right in front of us. The prompts are important. You do have to read about what's happening in the system for you to properly understand how to work it. We're going to do Control-C, get out of here, and we're going to do passwd for T1. This will be for the test account one, and we can say that the password is called, I don't know, password, and it says it fails the dictionary check, which is okay. Password again, and now we know that that account was modified. We see that from the prompt, but just because we're a little bit skeptical about it, we're going to go back to the shadow document and confirm, right? This is how you're going to pass this class. You're going to verify things by hand. You're going to make sure that if you type in a command, you can go back and then see, did it work? Theory tells me that passwd should modify the Etsy passwd file, and it does. Now notice, this is an encrypted version of the file of the password, but if I get out of here, I exit, I want to connect now as T1, as this account, and let me just type in here password. I'm going to copy that on my clipboard, make sure that it's there. I'm going to paste it to confirm, enter, paste, enter. I am now connected to the system as T1. Important, another piece of information, something that might show up on your quiz. The prompt, the prompt, very important. Username at system. Also, this guy is the folder where we currently live, because in the Etsy folder, we understood that Etsy passwd, we know that each of the accounts have a different home folder. This is usually where you connect. That is important. You want to know where your account exists. So we've done a lot. Now I know that you're probably, wow, we just went from trying to install the OS to a lot of information. So I know, again, trying to turn a new page, give the content, do not deviate from the subject. But I think I'm going to stop around here because we've managed to cover some ground enough for the quiz, in addition to what I'm going to show you guys tomorrow. But I do want to just revert back to the beginning of the class. And remember, we had that submission here. We wanted to check. We do have Scientific Linux, right? So we have that Scientific Linux right there. We knew that our Scientific Linux is connected to the network. So we can always confirm that by pinging Google. And how do I know that it's going to submit? Well, I am going to reload the page, make sure I'm there. Scientific Linux was selected. I don't click it again. I need to prevent this from happening. So if you're working on Scientific Linux and you want to click it again, it's going to destroy it and give you a brand new one. So I'm going to prevent that from happening, and I'm going to turn on the next option here called deploy again. So if you want the same one, you do it through here, not through this option. So, it's a working process. We're getting there. But to submit, we're going to click the option here. Well, of course, I'm going to double check that I have a session. I'm going to submit the assignment. I'm going to confirm, because obviously if you have animals, sometimes my girlfriend, she has a cat. Sometimes I'm right next to the cat. I'm either here or over there. There's a cat walking around the house, and the cat may just step on the keyboard, do all sorts of funny stuff. But as a pet owner, I have noticed that the cat has a hard time hitting two things at the same time. I've heard this before as an excuse. I don't know how things got submitted. Either we were testing, sometimes it's a mistake, but from now on, submissions will require 2 clicks. One to start the process, a second one to confirm. When you do that, it's going to tell you, please wait. And now it tells you that it's been submitted. And it marks it right away. This feedback wasn't there yesterday. I've been adding it because I want to make sure that everybody gets a good experience. I need your feedback. I want to make this website really, really cool. That's kind of my goal for kind of the rest of the year, is just to really concentrate back on teaching. I want to make these VMs really, really, really good. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll move on to another job, because Google does this very well. Amazon does this very well. And this VM management is pretty fun stuff, especially when you mix it up with learning. I mean, we're going to have pre-configured VMs with a lot of stuff for us to test. So I really want to take this page to the next level for you guys and for everybody else that's going to follow us, so that we can have some cool activities and hands-on experience. Look, you submitted the VM. The VM doesn't hurt. It never hurt. You could be in VNC. You could be logged out. So logged out is different from shutdown. So don't shut down the VM. Don't do that. You can quit. If you try to submit it a second time, that's fine. The prompt is going to come, but then you're going to see that, hey, that's already been submitted. I put times on the warning so you can see when the warning came up. All those, oh my God, I forgot. They're called snack bars. All those snack bar components are there for 5 seconds. And if you log back into the website, you'll see that it still marks you as being submitted. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I believe this is a much better video from the one I tried to record yesterday. I did. I'm not gonna lie, I had a fun time talking to you guys and debugging and trying a few things, but I think that this is definitely a more official lecture. So hope everybody liked it, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Remember, I will be enabling the quiz. I will send a message about the quiz, and I will expect you guys to watch these 2 videos before taking that quiz this weekend. I know it's a long weekend, still due on Sunday. It's just easier just to keep everything done on Sunday. So just watch the video. I'll record the video early tomorrow. You can watch that quickly, answer the questions, and be on your merry way to complete the assignment and get that quiz out of here. Next week, we'll be doing more deep dives into new material. Expect some of this stuff to start showing up. Not that you're going to do anything with it just now, but yes, if you start seeing some of these buttons start to show up on public key cryptography, authentication, or account management, let's leave those for next week. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow.